Welcome to our land development training. This is second session that we're running for people that are responsible for making a document called the Model Water Quality Management Plan happen at the public counters. South Orange County is transitioning now from in the way that it conditions land development for water quality protection from what I would call a treat and release paradigm to an on-site retention in the first instance paradigm. We had finally got approval of our model documentation by the regional board in June of this year, and the expectation is that we are implementing this new program in the county unincorporated areas south of El Toro Road and all of our South County cities no later than December 20th. So the training today is to help you get to grips with the key program documentation, the model WQMP, and in particular the technical guidance document, so that you're able to have this program implemented in your city no later than December 20th. Today, I'm pleased that we've got Aaron Pereski with Geosyntec. He's the principal author of the technical guidance document, and then we've also got Daniel and Remy with RBF that have done all the work for us on the hydro modification management plan, and which layers on a separate, an additional set of requirements in parts of the South Orange County that are deemed susceptible to, where stream channels are deemed susceptible to hydro modification issues. In terms of the support that the county is able to give you implementing this program, we've been doing it across North Orange County now for just over 2 years. It's gone very, very smoothly, and we have about 10,000 acres in total across North Orange County that has been built with the low impact development and the on-site retention features, and it's gone very, very, very smoothly. In terms of the support, we do the training. We have a program manager training tomorrow. We have program documentation. We have a technical helpline so that if you get questions from project proponents on matters of interpretation, questions about some of the requirements in the technical guidance document, we have access to Geosyntec and CDM to get those questions resolved, and we like to turn them around in 2 to 3 business days. You simply email them to me, I pass them along to the technical team, and then we get you an answer. And then the same with any issues on hydro modification. We still have Daniel and Remy under contract, so we're able to pass along any questions of interpretation to those guys. We also have some colored brochures that you can put at the public counter that talk about the changes that we're making to the way we condition land development for water quality protection, that explain the program and explain the types of projects going forward which will be subject to these requirements. So just before I hand it off to Aaron and later Daniel and Remy, are there any questions on the program? Clear as mud. So with that, I'm very pleased to
clear as tight grain, expansive soil mud.
Clear as a Class D soil, yeah. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron.
Logistically, what we have is a series of modules, and we're going to kind of start at the high level, and we're going to dive down into the details. The introductory modules are really kind of just intended to give you a high level, maybe 20 to 30 minutes a piece overview of what the document is, how it fits into the overall program, how it's laid out, just to give you a bit of a cheat sheet for how to get into it and know where things are located. The process modules, we're going to go through these two this morning with this group, and it's really just now getting into the documents and what do they say about the process for processing WQMPs, both on the public side or on the private side, and then projects on the public side. And then this afternoon will be the meat of the session. We will have covered all these topics in sort of a high level of detail in the morning, and then we'll dig into them more deeply in the afternoon. And these are more this group will be the only group that gets these. The program managers tomorrow will not get these modules. And this is where we get into some of the real details about how the program has changed and how that affects BMP selection, BMP sizing, and what folks are doing for alternative compliance and so on. So we'll probably try to take a break for lunch right here. Otherwise, our breaks are going to be primarily dictated probably by the videotaping. He'll reach a point of capacity and he'll have to shut down and do some data transfer. And so we'll try to schedule our bathroom breaks and stuff around times when he needs to offload data. In terms of structure, as I mentioned, let's have a conversation. I think of this as essentially the first implementation of the help desk that we're all going to converse over for the as we get to know this program. So the more questions that come up, the better. If there's questions that I can't answer succinctly, or we need to go back to the documentation and get you a concrete answer, I'll just go ahead and write them down, and we'll get back to the group with sort of the first iteration of the help desk in terms of a written response to some of the questions. Before we dive in, I just want to pose a hypothetical. If someone came to you with a WQMP, the redevelopment project, they're putting in a shopping mall, they have a geotech engineer who is conservative and is saying, I don't know what these soils are all about. We haven't had a budget to do a full site investigation, but I don't think these soils are very good for infiltration. I don't want to do infiltration in this area. I'm going to use XYZ biofiltration BMP. What was your response under the previous term permit, typically? Okay. Probably end of discussion, right? I'm not going to challenge this geotech engineer's professional opinion. That's their prerogative. And I think one of the key aspects of the new program is that response is no longer okay. We have a program. The program has changed in three primary ways. And the first and maybe foremost, I won't say foremost, the first is the incorporation of a low impact development performance standard. So whereas before we had a treatment control performance standard and we had perhaps a peak flow control performance standard associated with the Orange County Hydrology Manual, now we have a standard that kind of supersedes the treatment control standard, and that standard says retain the 85th percentile storm volume on site to the extent that you can. Do a rigorous technical feasibility analysis if you think you can't, and document that in your WQMP. And your next option is not treat and release, it's biofiltration, quote unquote, as defined by the permit, and we'll get into how they define biofiltration. If you can show that it's not technically feasible to both either retain or biofilter the whole design capture volume, which is what we'll refer to it as DCV, design capture volume, it's the 85th percentile 24-hour storm, then you are allowed to go to a treat and release type of an option that also needs to be supplemented with an off-site mitigation type of project or a regional type of low impact development project. So we have a very different hierarchy. And as I alluded to, that answer from the geotech, I just don't know what the soils are, and so I don't want to do infiltration, isn't viable anymore. He has to show that he's looked at it, he's conclusively determined that the soils will not support infiltration, and then the WQMP reflects that, and you move on down the line. So that's one thing that's changed. The second thing that's changed is related to the alternative compliance framework. And this is probably, how many folks granted waivers of BMPs to folks over the past 10 years? Someone comes in and says, I just can't do it. And they grant a waiver. Probably hasn't happened. Maybe very, very rarely, because we can typically do an underground type of a storm filter vault. It's very infrequent that someone has a real argument that they can't do some sort of a treatment control system. As we start to look at what the low impact development standards mean, people will find a way to make it work for the most part, but we are probably going to need to be considering alternative compliance more. And so a little more emphasis on an alternative compliance program. And then the third thing, which Daniel will talk about a lot more, is hydromod. And we've been working under an interim hydromod standard since 2010 in South Orange County, which has been based, instead of peak flow matching, it's been based on a whole flow duration control matching. And those of you who've dealt with this have realized that this can make things really large. We also are no longer looking at what was the condition of the site right before the project. We're looking at this condition of the site in a natural condition and matching our post-developed flows and durations back to that natural condition. And so where those criteria apply, they tend to control the sizing and design of a site. What Daniel will talk about is that we now almost have an HMP approved, which would replace the interim standard and would perhaps not make sizing any bigger, but include additional criteria related to sediment management, preserving sediment flow to streams, that could also have a pretty fundamental way that it changes how sites are laid out. So we're dealing with really kind of three fundamental things, and the rest of this talk is kind of really about where you'll find these things in the documents, how they've affected the structure of the documents, and what documents are even available to you, and also how they factor into the site assessment, the BMP selection and sizing aspects that are really critical to the preparation and approval of WQMPs. So this module that we're starting with is intended to just give you a feel for the overall program documents and how they all fit together. So what we start with is the current program documents that have been placed since 2003. And we have essentially a mirror image of all of these. So those familiar with each of these documents will not see an overall different document. You'll see the same documents as part of the new program, with the addition of the technical guidance document, which was developed to support the model WQMP, and the hydromodification management plan, which is developed to support the implementation of hydromod controls. The HMP will be incorporated into the model WQMP. So we have this model WQMP, which you're familiar with, this water quality management plan template, which you're familiar with. The technical guidance document came about in response to this increasing emphasis on feasibility and retain on site, and how to understand when you've done enough, and how to help us strike that balance between wanting to protect surface water quality, wanting to reduce volumes of runoff from a site, but also facing a number of other considerations like utilities, like soils, landslides, and a whole host of other issues that could come about with this. And so what we realized is that the WQMP preparer and reviewer, who are kind of stuck in the middle between a criteria that says do it to the maximum extent practicable, and working with a whole design team that says, well, there's a lot of good reasons why you shouldn't, helping them answer the question of, how much do I need to do? So the general layout of the documents is the model WQMP says what, why, and when. It lays out the regulatory criteria. The technical guidance document answers the question of how. So it's a companion document to the model WQMP, and as before, the model WQMP template is essentially your starting point for preparing the documents to help maintain consistency between one document that, all the documents that you're responsible for reviewing in a given year. So I won't go into DAMP Section 7 in a lot of detail, but I will say that DAMP Section 7 is essentially the umbrella document that describes the overall new development, redevelopment program that the city implements. Of this, the model WQMP is a major element of a primary appendix to DAMP Section 7. DAMP Section 7 was previously updated in November 2010, and then updated again as the North Orange County Model WQMP and technical guidance document were developed. And so the latest versions of this are on the website, and what you'll hear me say is that these documents are under development. We've been dealing with some late-minute changes from the San Diego board related to the HMP and other things, some decisions by the county to adapt these documents a bit. And so what we're targeting is the end of this month for all these documents that I'm going to talk about will be available for you and your use. The target date is the end of this month to have those ready for you to use. So another element that will be important as you incorporate this into your local codes and ordinances is the local implementation plan. That the model WQMP itself does not apply to your jurisdiction. Your local implementation plan that defines how that model WQMP will be implemented is what bears the weight of law in your jurisdiction. And so what the county has prepared thus far is a LIP template, which includes text for both North Orange County co-permittees and South Orange County co-permittees in different colors. And so it's essentially a matter of taking that template, picking the text that fits you, and incorporating the specific personnel responsible for the implementation of the WQMP, and essentially customizing it to your local requirements. Although the amount of customization that is required it doesn't tend to be a lot. So the model WQMP, which we've talked about, this is where you'll find the most significant changes. This document was essentially completely overhauled between 2009 and 2011 as part of a stakeholder process. It was a stakeholder process that involved folks from both parts of the county, although it was a more heavily weighted by North Orange County co-permittees because they saw this coming into effect very in the imminent future for them, and it's been a while for the South Orange County region to come online for this program. But this is where you'll see the increased emphasis on low impact development and this new low impact development performance standard. You'll see hydro modification management plan criteria incorporated, and you'll probably see the HMP as an appendix to this, bearing the weight of the model WQMP itself. And you'll also see changes to the alternative compliance approaches that are available. The one thing that the county has decided to do, we originally tried to keep the model WQMP to bridge both portions of the county, both permits that applied, but as we've gotten into revising for the North County and responding to regional board comments for the South County, we've realized that these two programs are really diverging and will continue to diverge as South County permits evolve and North County permits evolve. And so in the interest of giving you a 60-page document instead of a 120-page document, essentially what we're doing at the current moment is essentially streamlining that model WQMP to remove any sections related to North County, remove any references related to North County, and essentially make it so that everything you see in there is applicable to your jurisdiction in South Orange County. Mentioned the water quality management plan template. These are also being updated, albeit much more to much lesser degrees. The same sections will apply. You'll just see different subsections within sections related to, for example, BMPs, to reflect that we now have new categories of BMPs, low impact development BMPs, and hydro modification BMPs, in addition to our standard treatment and source control BMPs. The technical guidance document, as I mentioned, provides technical information and this methodology to help answer the how questions that come up. One thing to note is that the 2 years of implementation in North Orange County have led to some errata. Some are just based on chronology. We have a new 303D list. We decided we should take the opportunity to replace that. In other cases, we identified some areas that needed clarification or just some simple corrections of text, things that were mistyped. And so there's been an errata that has finally been approved by the Santa Ana board, and that's posted on their website. But for all intents and purposes, you won't have to worry about this, as these errata are being incorporated into the document and will be available as part of a fresh 2013 version of the document to move forward with. But this is a good chance to point out that the help desk is the way that we hear about some of these things that need further clarification, and there's no reason why we can't produce additional errata as this thing moves forward, make it clearer, easier to use for folks. The hydro modification management plan, which I'll let Daniel talk about more, defines both the criteria as well as the how-to related to managing hydro modification impacts. And so it's essentially if the model WQMP and technical guidance document are split into the criteria and the how-to, this document is essentially embodies both of those things, but on a specific topic, hydromod control. Richard already mentioned the program in North Orange County is off to a quick start. Got in right in advance of this sort of development boom that we're seeing now. They've seen a lot of WQMPs come through with criteria very similar to what you see in the LID criteria in South Orange County. I will say that the hydromodification criteria are very different in North Orange County than South Orange County. So if you do business in both, certainly be aware that the hydromod criteria are very different. What we have seen is that the off-ramps have been really important for folks. People have been taking the feasibility outs. They haven't been trying to force infiltration to work in sites where it really shouldn't. And we've seen people responsibly applying the site assessment information to help select BMPs that work for the site. And I think that's been really important in the long term in ensuring that we have systems that continue to work rather than systems that optimistically think infiltration's great and will fail within a short time period. So I don't think of these off-ramps as necessarily a liability for you to approve them, provided that the information is there. The off-ramps are there for a purpose, and we need to use them when they make sense. One thing that we've noticed in North Orange County is that the vendor community has evolved. They were involved in the stakeholder process. They've evolved the solutions that they're able to offer for us, and increasingly they're able to meet the standards. And so developers and engineers who are used to going to their favorite vendor to get a treatment control system are now increasingly being able to go to the same vendor and ask for a package that complies with the new permit criteria. And we've seen that be really valuable for a lot of small developers who don't want to design things themselves. So with that, I'm going to transition into the first document, a little deeper into the model WQMP, but just pause for any comments, questions about how the day's going to run or anything that you've heard so far.
So there's been no revision to the definition of a priority project?
There has, and I'll get into that in this next module. There have been some revisions to the definition of a priority project as part of the 2009 South County permit. The other thing that I'm going to note is I'm going to refer to the 2013 San Diego Regional permit. If you've been following it, probably that was approved in this spring by the San Diego Regional Board. It doesn't apply to South Orange County immediately. Orange County will seek enrollment underneath that program when the term of this permit runs out. So it's a lot of the same stuff. The HMP, it doesn't require the HMP to be rewritten. It doesn't define a much different LID performance standard for projects. In some ways, you'll find out it actually provides you with a bit more flexibility in the future. This 2009 permit was very prescriptive about a few things and didn't provide some allowances that the 2013 permit actually does. And so there's a bit of a sense that this interim period is perhaps I won't say most stringent, but I will say least flexible period that we have and that we're going to have to get through before we maybe find ourselves into a little bit more flexible playing field in the future. And we'll get into what that means, and it primarily relates to street projects as well as relating to the definition of what biofiltration is.